Zach Gelb, CBS Sports Radio, national talk show host who we got to know back when Matt Rule was hired, when he covered Matt at Temple and, of course, now at Nebraska. One of the games we'll discuss with him. Zach, great to have you. We appreciate it. You mentioned you had Boise State head coach Danielson on the show, and that's one of the games we wanted to talk with you about. There's others, but your thoughts, Boise State with Ashton Jeanty, and then, of course, Oregon that just kind of looked blah in their game one and their opener.
Well, first off, thanks for having me. Secondly, I'll take some of that beer that you guys are promoting in terms of payment. So send that my way to my New York City apartment because I could use a few definitely this weekend with all the football I have to watch. Spencer Danielson is a young up-and-coming coach. Very impressed with him. He reminds me a lot like Dan Lanning, just with when he walks into a room, he overtakes the room, or he walks onto a Zoom, he overtakes the Zoom because of the energy that he displays. Ashton Jeanty was the story there with the 6 touchdowns, and he had more rushing yards than what BC has as a team, and we all know what BC did up against Florida State. Oregon did not look like a top 5 team in the country when they did go up against Idaho, but I kind of chalked that up. All right, it's week 1. You're going up against an inferior opponent. They did win the game, so I expect them to be much better in week 2, but if they play like they did in week 1, they will not beat Boise State. And Dylan Gabriel, high expectations for him. So you would think that they will look better in week 2 and get back to the Oregon Ducks that we thought we were going to get going into this season.
Zach, do you think that Boise State has enough defense at all to contain Oregon like Idaho was magically able to?
Probably not, is what I would say. That's definitely the biggest question in terms of the Boise State side going into this one. I know there's a little quarterback concern maybe with Boise State, but we know what that offense is capable of. But what was lost in the Boise State game was how many points they did allow. And we know they're going up against a much better opponent in Oregon this week. So I would probably lean on the side of that Boise State doesn't have enough on the defensive side of the ball.
Zach, DJ Uiagalelei is one of the big talking points in college football this week after the Noles 0-2 start. Here's a guy who, you cover the NFL. You know how the talk is surrounding different prospects and whatnot. But, man alive, just what are your thoughts on what we've seen unfold in Tallahassee these first couple games?
What a disaster. And there's some people saying, Mike Norvell needs to lose his job. That's ridiculous. This is just a transfer portal and NIL. Now, some years you will hit, some years you will not. We all got fooled going into this season. I do believe that Norvell is a good coach, but when you look at this year, what a disaster this has been. You lose to Georgia Tech, and they didn't trust DJ Uiagalelei in that game. And then late in the game, he finally played well, but then the defense allows the score, and they end up losing to Georgia Tech. And you think, okay, easy bounce back spot against Boston College, 12-team college football playoff now. You'll be fine. And then Boston College just bullied you. Led by Bill O'Brien and him being a first-time head coach at Boston College. We know he had stops at Penn State and obviously the NFL with the Texans as a head man. But this goes back to DJ Uiagalelei. Really, that's the big talking point. Remember that game where he filled in for Trevor Lawrence with COVID, Clemson, Notre Dame? He looked like he was going to be a rock star. And then a lot of it was Dabo to blame in Clemson. And Dabo has his own issues, and he's not adapting to what college football is anymore. But I give some credit to Jonathan Smith, who's now at Michigan State, with what he did with DJ Uiagalelei last year. But this guy has to be, in DJ Uiagalelei, maybe one of the more overhyped college quarterbacks ever, because he was supposed to be great, gave us a little tease, and just has never been able to find that magic again.
Michigan in the big house, 110,000, where they're, of course, coming off the national title, but there are still some dark clouds and transition, and Harbaugh's gone, and Texas, that looks like they're loaded against that great Michigan front. Your thoughts about that one?
Yeah, on paper, this suggests that Texas is going to win and Texas is going to win big. The only reservation I have is that because Michigan is a 7.5-point underdog. I don't think Michigan is going to win the game, but I think because of their defense, they could keep it close and maybe they will cost some people some money if you end up electing to plus the 7.5 points on Michigan, because I think it opened up at 4. Now it's already up to 7.5. I think most are on the Texas Longhorns, but that offense is going to be a huge question. Like Michigan, to me, they don't have as much talent offensively as Ohio State had last year, but they kind of remind me like Ohio State last year, where they're not good enough to win a national championship, but they will win games because of their defense. It's offensively, what are you going to get out of the quarterback? The offensive line has to be better. Donovan Edwards, I know he had a great national championship game up against Washington, but he had a bad year last year. He needs to get back to Donovan Edwards from 2 years ago. But all offseason long, I thought Orji was going to be the quarterback. And then I was in Vegas 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to John Jansen. He's like, I don't think it's going to be Orji. I think it's going to be Davis Warren. And it was Davis Warren. But I think there's more upside to Orji, but clearly they don't trust him to throw the football enough, as we've seen so far in his short career in Ann Arbor. So, yes, I think Texas will win the game, but I believe it will be a little bit closer than what people expect.
This is kind of another, weird thing for an offseason. Usually a team wins a national championship. You can count a lot coming back. They lost a ton to the NFL, including their coach. They have this world of conflict kind of around them. How much do you think that does affect these current Michigan Wolverines, that, the coaches are gone, a lot of the players are gone, but a lot of the questions and the conflict still kind of remain outside of it?
Yeah, so last year, I get a lot of Michigan players on my show, and I give credit to the university. Once the Stallion stuff happened, they didn't stop giving us players. And the players openly talked about it, from Chris Jenkins to Blake Corum, to Colston Loveland, to Roman Wilson, to Moore, the corner, like Will Johnson. I've talked to these guys about it extensively. So not having some of those guys there, I do think is big. But I don't think what happened last year in terms of the scandal and what's going to be the aftermath of the scandal is really impacting this team. It's just that they lost a lot of talent, and I don't think this is a bad team. I still think this could be a 9-win football team or so. They're going to be good, but when they win, it's going to be ugly. And there will be some ugly wins this year, but you'd rather win those games than compared to have ugly performances and be on the losing side of it.
Zach, I think most everybody can agree that Dabo Swinney's approach to the transfer portal is a bit archaic, and it's maybe even starting to cost them some games. I think to overreact a little bit to Georgia, is probably not the right thing to do given how good they are. Where do you stand on Dabo, Clemson, and just where they are in modern college football right now?
Yeah, 3 years ago, I don't think there was a national talk show host in the country that got more dragged for saying Dabo's arrogance is going to be a part of his demise than me. I was called every name in the book on these Clemson message boards. Now I'll just say, how do you like me now? Pretty much. What I thought going into this game, and let's be real, Georgia played like a B- game. They weren't even at their best. When that was 0-0 at the end of the first quarter, I'm like, hammer, Georgia. Even at 6-0 at halftime, Georgia, you could tell, is just that much better. So I get your point. It's tough to trash a coach after losing to Georgia, because outside of Nick Saban in the SEC championship game last year, no one is basically able to figure out Georgia the last few years with Kirby Smart. But it shows you that Clemson is no longer elite. Clemson is no longer great. They could still be a good program. But until Dabo adapts with the times, and he says he will, but he never does. He makes fun of NIL, right? The name, image, and likeness of God in the transfer portal. And that's what his program was built off of. But you don't see any change. That arrogance is what made Clemson better than what anyone could have expected with Dabo there. But the standard that he built was to win national championships. I'm not saying you expect that each and every year, but I can't take them as a serious national championship contender ever again until Dabo says, okay, I'm going to actually be a coach here in what college football is now, because he's failing to do so. Like, look at Coach K. When he was at Duke, he didn't want to take one and dones. Finally did so, Jalil Okafor, and then they end up winning a national championship. The great ones adapt, and in football, out of all the sports, that's where the adjustments need to be made more than any of them, and Dabo's failed to do so.
I'm not so sure, and Craig and Paul can also add along with Zach. I thought I heard a soundbite from Dabo from maybe it was yesterday or this week's coach's media session, and he talked about, you're all going to write that, but it's not going to affect me. No, it does. He hears all of that, so he's not telling the truth.
Smokey, this is a man that is not even taking phone calls now on his coach's show. So don't tell me you could write what you want and you're not impacted by it. Bullcrap. Or as Deion Sanders would say, bull junk.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Deion, our good friend Matt Rule at home in Lincoln, boy, they need a nice win in Lincoln. It's been forever. Colorado beat them up last year. Your thoughts about the Huskers and Buffaloes?
Yeah, you guys know me. I love Matt. I love what they're building at Nebraska, and I thought going into this year that this was an 8-win team. I know the Mahomes comparisons are easy with Dylan Raiola to Patrick Mahomes because they look like one another, and Mahomes has played into it, and so is Dylan Raiola. but look at some of those throws. The one down the right sideline was awesome. I thought the sidearm throw was even better, but this is a huge, huge, huge game for Matt Rule. I know everyone's going to talk Raiola, Shedeur Sanders, Coach Prime, Travis Hunter. This is a statement victory in year 2 for Matt Rule in Lincoln to show that there has been a big improvement from last year. And you know this, Smokey, that team last year should have been a bowl team. And they had some of the worst quarterback play that I've ever seen. Even some of the Chicago Bears are offended by the quarterback play that they saw last year. Now they have the legitimate quarterback. You know they're good in the trenches. I like Nebraska to win the game, but Matt has to win this game.
Yeah, they've in the past few years, and whether it was Scott Frost or even Mike Riley, or in this case, Matt, they've hyperventilated instead of just going to play football, which is something he's been working on. You've seen some of the videos in the offseason or during August. Just go play the game and stop worrying about the outside stuff that's out there, that are around you.
Yeah, and a source tells me that he's very annoyed at you that you have not attended Lincoln yet.
No, I know.
And that he's not even
know.
talking to you.
No, first of all, but people don't know. First of all, he's not coming on until I go there, which means you may not get him on this year. But then Zach doubled down, sent Matt a text with me included, and said,
"Did I do that? Did I stir the pot?"
No, it was you. It was absolutely you, and I deserve that. It's hard to imagine that I haven't done that, and I would love to be able to. I'm sitting there looking at a high school schedule, what Baylor's doing. What I need to do is just not do the high school game, not cover Baylor, and go to Lincoln and pick one where, my God, I hope that they win.
No one's stopping you.
No
one's stopping you.
I know.
Zach,
well, he's going to start blaming the hip, right? I heard that MRI read on the way in.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, Zach, for Deion Sanders in Colorado, they're clearly increased talent-wise this year. They're deeper than they were, but they still stylistically are all finesse, and their offense isn't really much more than Shedeur. Let's go make this up as we go. And that's kind of surprised me from Pat Shurmur, who is, a longtime NFL coach. Is what they're doing right now sustainable enough to get them to 6 or 7 wins?
They could get to 6. I predicted before the year that they're going to fall short and they're only going to get 5. Like North Dakota State, I thought was an easy bet in week 1, plus the points. I thought Colorado would win the game. Shedeur is going to be a top 10 pick. Travis Hunter is going to be a top 10 pick. Horn is a really good wide receiver. The kid Seaton could be a good offensive lineman. We know what the hype is. Here are my concerns, though. The run defense improved from what I saw in week 1. The rest of the defense, though, is not great. And also on the offensive side of the ball, it was weird at the end of the game. You could say Shedeur was improving, but you would think then you trust your offensive line and you run the football. Instead, they were throwing it and gave North Dakota State some time back. I just look at that team. They're going to have 2 top 10 picks, and there's a legitimate chance that they don't make a bowl game this year, which I don't know the stats on that. I'm going to assume that's never been done before in the history of the sport. They are better, but like on the offensive line, they were so bad last year. So even if you say you got better and you improved on the offensive line, did you become a good offensive line? After week 1, I would say no. Nebraska should get home, and then you're just going to have Shedeur be basically Superman and try to turn garbage into gold.
Well, he's unbelievable. He really, really, really is. Zach, last thing, since the NFL season does start tomorrow night, one quick note on the NFL. Is it Kansas City and everybody else?
Yeah, until the Chiefs go down, it's the Chiefs against the rest of the league. Now, Joe Burrow needs to stay healthy. We've seen Joe Burrow and the Bengals take down the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game a few years ago. We'll see what Rodgers does with the Jets. I'm not a believer in Tua and Miami to take down the Chiefs in a big spot. We'll see if Lamar and Derrick Henry can be a big threat. But I look at the Chargers. I don't think the Chargers are going to be good this year. But for future years, we need Herbert and Harbaugh to be great together. Because look at the Patriots' great run of dominance inside the AFC East. Forget about the rest of the NFL. No one legitimately challenged them consistently in the division. We need the Chargers to be good in that division to try to, some years, actually pose a threat to Kansas City just inside their division for starters. And then in the NFC is getting better, man. The Niners we know are going to be really good. The Eagles will bounce back after their dreadful collapse. The Lions are good. The Packers are a solid football team. The Bears are going to be good. I think the Cowboys are going to miss the playoffs this year. But I'll say this. I like the Rams. I don't think enough people are talking about the Rams because Donald is retired. That offense, as long as the line can hold up, is absolutely loaded with talent.
Hey, man, it's fantastic, Zach. We look forward to this weekly segment with you. You and I, you reached back out to me. You've been on with us before. We've known you for a while. Great to have you on. Great to have you on with the knowledge and the guests that you get. Thank you for your time and have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, now I know I get free MRIs and beers by doing this segment. So you'll have me for 365 days out of the year.
Absolutely, man. We will send it that way. Zach Gelb, CBS Sports Radio, national talk show host, and now a part of 365 Sports on Wednesdays in the 5 o'clock hour.